Hello everybody and welcome to chapter 14 of our Python 3 basics tutorial video series. And in this video what we're going to be talking about is the basics of writing to a file. So it should be noted that there are actually two methods for saving data to a file, and those methods are writing and appending. Writing to a file is going to just write only that data to a file. This means if there was anything in that file originally, it will be gone. It will be overwritten, basically. The other method is append, and if you use that, then append is just going to add to whatever was previously there. So if you want to retain the data and you want to just kind of grow a file, then you would use append. Whereas if you just want to save some information to a file, say you're saving a picture, for example, you're going to write data. You're not going to append picture data. You're going to write because you want a new picture, right? So those are the differences. So first we're going to show writing to a file, then we'll show appending, and then we'll actually show how to read from a file. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So let's say we have a variable called write_me, and write_me is equal to some example text. And this is what we want to save to our file. Now, the way that we start this process is we're going to say save file equals open, and open is it's a built-in function to Python, and the first parameter we're going to add is going to be the file name, and we're going to call this file example write.txt, and then comma, and then here is where you specify the method that you want to open this file with, and we're going to use W for write, and this is where we define whether we're writing, appending, or reading, but we'll get to the other two in a moment. So this is writing. So save file, we open this file with the intention to write. At this point, if this is with the intention to write, we will have cleared that file completely. It will be overwritten with nothing to start. Next, we're going to do save file dot write, and now we want to write to this file write_me, and then the next part is very important. If we just left it here, we will have actually written this data to the file, but the problem is we haven't actually closed the file. So it's kind of like if you were editing like Notepad, and you wrote in some data, but then you never saved it and closed it. The data wouldn't be there necessarily. Now with a programming language like this, it wrote the data, but it hasn't necessarily saved it yet, and it's certainly still editing, quote unquote, the file. So if later on you tried to write some more data maybe to it down the road, or even read from the file, you would get an error because you never finished what you were doing to this file. So you have to do save file dot close, and that will close the file. Now, it's important to note that so far there is literally nothing, this file doesn't exist yet. So when you open a file, if it exists, it will clear the file. If it doesn't exist, it's going to create it. And that's going to be true with append as well. The only time it's not really true is really with like read or something. But anyway, moving on. So now what we can do is we can save and run this. And that's it. If we come over to our directory here, so we have all of the files here, writing to a file, and then this is our file that we just wrote, we can bring that up, and that opens up a notepad, and it says example text. And that's it. We wrote to this file. So writing to a file, very simple. You just need to do basically these three things. You do open, file name, and then the method of opening, W for write. Then we're going to use .write and write whatever we want to write. So the parameter of .write is the data that you want to write. And then just don't forget to do save file .close. This is really important if you're using write. Append, it's not as important, and then read, it's definitely not as important. Anyway, that's going to conclude writing to a file. In the next video, we're going to be doing appending to a file, so that's going to be part 15, and then part 16 we'll do reading from a file. So that concludes this. Stay tuned to the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome to part 15 of your Python 3 basics tutorial video series. In this video, we're going to be talking about appending to a file. So again, appending is going to be adding to the very end of a file as opposed to writing, which overwrites what was originally there. with the new data. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So let's make a variable, and we'll call it append me equals some text. And then we're going to say, it's going to be very similar to before. We're going to say save file equals open, and then again you put the file name. So we're going to call this example file.txt, and then instead of W here, we're going to use A for append. So as you can see here, almost identical syntax. The only difference is this. And then we're going to use save file. And some people might think that you would use .append, but you do not use .write because we've already notified it that everything we do is with the intention to append, not actually overwrite. So we write append me, and then we do save file .close. And that's it. So what we can do is we can save that, and we can run that. And we'll close out of this, and we see that we got a new file, example file, and we see we have some text. So again, even with just append, if the file does not already exist, it will be created. And now we can do some more text like that. Let us save it and run it. And let me close out of the original and come back over here. And we see this, right? Some text and then some more text. So you can see there that here it just literally appended it to the end, and we might normally intend for it to be more like this, like some more text and then, you know, by a line. So what I'll do here is we'll just delete till some text, save, close out of that. And what we can do here is we can use what's called a new line character. So we can say save file.write, and we write a new line. So it's \n. And this is kind of a form of regular expressions. Another one would be T for tab, S for space, and so on. It's not really regular expression, just simply because we're not using, you know, RE. But a new, this just means new line. You can also, when you read a file, which we'll show in a little bit, you can split by new line, so you get each data by new line, but we'll get there. So now what we can do is we can say even more text, save and run it, and let's run it one more time, and maybe one more time. Okay, now you can close this, open up example file, and we see we have some text, even more text, even more text, even more text. So those are the basics of appending to a file. Very simple, very similar to writing to a file. Again, writing to a file will overwrite any previous data with the new data that we're writing, whereas append is going to save data to the file, but it will not overwrite previous existing. It will just append it to the very end. So that's it with appending to a file. In the next video, what we're going to be talking about is reading from a file. So stay tuned for that. Hello and welcome to part 16 of our Python 3 Basics tutorial series. In this video, what we're going to be talking about is how to read from a file in Python 3. So in the previous two videos, we learned how to write and append to a file, and now what we want to talk about is reading from the file. So for example, we're going to use this example file, and let's say we want to read from this file. What we're going to go ahead and do is say read me equals, and again open, and we're going to use that example file. Yeah, it's example file.txt. So example file, file.txt, and this time we want to open it with the intention to R, or read. Now we can go ahead and actually just do .read right away on that, save ourselves a line, and then now what we can do is let's just say print read me, save that, run it, and this is the output. So just like what it looks like. Now, fairly quickly, people want to, if you have a file like this that is separated by new lines, readme is just one bit of text, right? One string. But what we can do is we could do split me equals read me dot, and then we can do split, and then you say what you want to split it by, and in this case we want to split it by a new line, so \n for new line, which we already kind of covered, but that's how we even wrote it to a file to make new lines. Now we can split by new line, And now what we can do is print split me like this, save that and run it, and then we get some text, even more text, even more text, and even more text. And this is actually in a Python list, as you can see. So we could do, print split me 3 or 2. Let's do 2. Okay. So that just printed up even more text right at the bottom. Now, oops. There's an easier way to do this, actually, if you are just going to split by each line. And instead of .read, what you can do is something like this. So we could say read me2 equals open, and then the file name. So example file.text with the intention to read. And then instead of .read only, you would do .read lines. And this we'll put it into a list already for you. So now we can say print read me2, save and run that, and now we get this, and it's by line. But as you can see, we have these little new lines added to it. So keep that in mind, that when you read by each line, if you had a new line there, it's going to show it. But just for, well, I guess we won't really touch on that for now. But anyway, just keep in mind that you can also split by new line, and then you won't have to deal with those new lines. But you can also replace them if you wanted. So that's it for reading from a file. In the next video, what we're going to be talking about is classes in Python. And I don't mean classes as in a Python class, I mean classes as in the structure. So classes are kind of confusing to a lot of people, but we can hopefully break them down a little bit to make them easier to understand. So stay tuned for Chapter 17, Classes. Hello and welcome to Chapter 17 of our Python 3 Basics tutorial series. In this chapter, what we're going to be talking about is classes. So we're not going to get too in-depth with classes in this video. Instead, what I'd like us to do is kind of break down how classes actually work. We will write our own class. But we're not going to get, you can do a lot of things with classes, so we're not going to get too in-depth here. That's a little bit more advanced. But it is useful if you can understand a class, so hopefully by the end of this you'll be able to look at someone's class and still at least understand what they're doing there. And also understand the purpose of classes. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to make a calculator with our class. So to define a class, you just write class, and that's it. And then you give the class name. In our scenario, we're going to call it class calc. And there's no parameters here, we're just going to do a colon. Then what you're going to do is you're going to embed functions. So what we'll do is we'll say define add, and for add there will be x and y, and then we'll say answer equals x plus y, and then we'll say print answer. Okay. Now we'll define sub for subtract, x, y again, colon, answer equals x minus y, print answer. Then again, now we're going to do multiplication, so we'll define mult, x, y, colon, answer equals x multiplied by y. And since we're adding all these nice spaces, let's add one there too. And then we'll say print answer. And then finally we'll do division, define div x, y, and answer is going to equal x divided by y. And then we'll print answer. So now we've created our calc class. And so what we can do at this point is we can run it. So let's hit F5, we'll save that and run it. And now we have this calc class loaded into memory. So let's say we want to use it. Well, to use it, we would say calc dot, and then what do we want to do? Do we want to add, subtract, multiply, or whatever? And if you sit there long enough, you will get all these options. So you can use your arrow key and pick it, and it kind of makes coding a little faster. I tend to not use it very much, but it is there if you wanted to. So let's say we want to, I guess we'll do add. And then in here is where you're going to put your parameters. So what do we want to add? Let's say 5 and 3. we'll run that, and the return is 8. Similarly, we can do calc.molt, and we'll do 5, 3 again, and we get 15. Okay, calc.div, 5 and 3, 1.6666, and calc.sub, 5, 3, and we get 2. So hopefully that makes at least a little bit of sense as far as how that works, right? You're referencing calc.add is just the class, and it's a lot like a module, so to speak. So we can almost envision this as like the class as a module, and all these functions are functions within the module. So calc.add refers to calc and then the function add and so on. And that's pretty much it. With classes, though, you can do all sorts of things with initialization and then some sort of default parameters and passing things through. And so I don't want to get into that because that's a little bit more of an advanced topic, but you can use classes in this fashion, and you should at least be able to read through a class by this point and see what someone is doing with their code and their class. So that's going to conclude classes. In the next video, what we're going to be talking about is some basic math operations with the statistics module, as well as we'll cover raw input real quickly. 2 fairly quick topics to cover, but both extremely useful. So stay tuned for Chapter 17. Thanks for watching.